Ladies and gentlemen, give me one moment here. It looks like there's a little bit of an audio thing going on my end here. I'm hearing multiple things at the same time, so let me just get this turned down a little bit so I can focus in. All right, here we are. Already we see an elim in the feed here. We got RTZ taking a rough hit, one player down already at the hands of Logic, with eyes still on Farvoy's Seiko as they drive around. Already a little bit of preliminary loot. We see the brand new 5.56 Abacan in effect here. Seiko already having it equipped, but look at that kill feed. RTZ just giving and taking, trading elims with KH. Lexi taking Toki down out of the equation. Oman E of Kakuri Esports. Now, Kakuri Esports, if memory serves correct, didn't exactly have the easiest time in semifinals. No, they ended the semifinal stage at about 15th place overall. Now, what does that tell me as an analyst or a caster? It tells me that they are fairly comfortable in making it to their in-game zones, but maybe a little bit more reserved on that close quarter confrontation, picking and choosing their fights in the earlier stages of game. Now, while it may have proved beneficial in that semifinal stage, I don't know that that would be enough to really take home the gold medal chicken dinner in the final stage of these PMES community finals. Archon with the S686 Vector combo, finding himself with a gun combo out of desperation and necessity, more so than preference here. We got Afterlife, Razorino here with that Uzi in hand, eyes outward at MS mindset. And this is going to be a tough position here for Razorino. As you can see, just swimming in a sea of enemies and fairly under-equipped himself. Not even a helmet to his name. One bad bullet could spell the end for him. So by all means, yeah, we can say what we want about a reserved approach. You know, people can harken on, oh, camping is boring, camping is not the right move. This is for sure going to be the right move until his teammates can provide a little bit of assistance and security to him. And I guess the name of the game is just laying low, under the radar, not drawing too much unnecessary attention to yourself here. Now, I'm not really hearing any sound from the game feed. Production, I don't believe the sound is coming through on the game feed end. But, oh, we got Matoma just out and eliminated, down, done, and dusted by, goodness gracious, Kenny, 77k. And that is going to be a rough start for the opposition. Razorino finding a little bit of better equipment here. Now equipped with the Bison and the AK, that little 53 round 9mm clip. Gonna give him a little bit of extra leeway room in case he misses any early on bullets. But as we mentioned earlier, this is a battle of patience between Afterlife and the likes of Mindset, with Razorino outnumbered, outmanned, and outgunned here. And while the teammates are not too far off in the northern Georgia Pole region, they're not quite close enough to provide any immediate assistance if Razorino is knocked here. So he's going to have to really pick and choose the moments that he puts these bullets outward, if he does. And in my personal opinion, I don't see it being the beneficial move, especially this early on, stage one, game one of finals, day one. Yeah, you definitely don't want to put yourself at an immediate tilt. You don't want to give your opponent any easy elim points, and you don't want to put yourself at any immediate deficit. Getting eyes on Games United Force, we got Bronze Flank here taking a hefty amount of damage as the opposition pushing forward. He's desperately going to be trying to secure that first aid. Will he be able to do so in time? Oof, as Asteria Esports is swarming on him. Here we go, Betho, vehicle push is underway. We got Capizino down. preparation. Nades coming outwards from heaven as he quickly switches over to his Bison, while Bronze Flank trying to hold off the building behind with an AUG-23. All right, catching eyes once again. The battle of patience continues here. Betho just trying to bait out the opposition here. We've got Games United Force practicing a fairly patient strategy, just holding position and waiting for this inevitable push from Betho 99. Cooking up a preliminary nade, going to try to make it rain a little bit of hellfire, and the nades are out. A trick shot off the window frame, doing a little bit of damage onto Heaven, taking him down to half health, but definitely not enough to take him out of the equation. And Heaven preparing a retaliatory nade, and it is a battle of utilities, and down goes Heaven. Heaven has fallen at the hands of Betho, quickly reorienting to that UMP-45, that close quarter combat annihilator, with Bronze Flank down and Goat down for members of Hysteria. It's a 3v3 here, potentially. Betho desperately trying to secure this early revive, playing medic here to his fallen teammate Goat, and quickly sucking up that blue zone damage just barely. And here we have it. That is that. They did get the finish on him. Wow. All right, I apologize. I did not see that finish there in the happening, but it did happen. Hysteria Esports acquiring their first 4 elims on the board and not losing a single member in the process. This is a very, very healthy start for the team. And speaking of Hysteria, this is the team, Hysteria was the team that currently finds themselves already in first place overall with those 4 elims. I think on the board, that's got to be the max number thus far. And yep, confirmed. So now catching eyes on Nameless here up against the likes of Celestial. Celestial Esports pushing upward, and yes, a DBS sounds the same in every language, and it says goodbye the same way. And they are not out of the thick of it yet. There is still one more member of the opposition nearby. All right. This is the Nameless up against him, and this is going to be a battle where Celestial outnumbers them 2-1, weighing their options. They say, yeah, even if it is in our favor, probably not a fight worth risking losing everything and the potential for additional points down the road in round 1. So, yeah, they lost half their starting lineup, but they continue on for the remainder of round 1, at least for now. Hope is still there. Archon just sipping a high-calorie dinner of blue zone damage, brought down to 1/3 of his overall health, not by any enemy, but just by that zone itself. And ladies and gentlemen, as we know to be the nature of PUBG Mobile Esports, as it has been for 7 years, as the match progresses, that zone damage is going to just increase and increase. And as this zone gets smaller, the players have less and less room to spread out. And just like that, Clutch is down, done, and dusted for GRX, leaving it in the hands of Zebi, Mafia, and their third member, who I apologize, I cannot read the name. Misano is eliminated, not by an enemy, but by the zone itself. And ladies and gentlemen, I say it time and time again, I don't care who you are, what profession you have, what tier you play at, no one has a higher KD than that blue zone. And Mafia is about to learn the hard way with a Soprano ending that vehicle is about 1 bullet away from its destruction here, as he tries his best to get some security here inside the shelterway, using these vehicles to block the stairway if possible. Just a little bit of downtime here. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we haven't lost very many players thus far. Understandably so, as we just reaching the concluding portions of Stage 3. But already in the mix here, we've got the likes of Fnatic. And they are duking it out across the pond here with none other than Ritzy Esports. Off in the distance, we can see it in the kill feed. GRX suffering a little bit of knock damage at the hands of OG, and Asteria continuing this onslaught, now bringing themselves up to 5 elims total, really continuing the momentum from the semifinal stage. Even with the score reset, their eyes are on the prize. They are locked in and ready to go. Betho, M4 in hand, eyes outward, and providing a little bit of overwatch and cover fire as his team scouts around with vehicles. Lay of the land here, and as you can see, the zone is shifting upward. It's going to be an eastern zone to the east of Yasnaya, hugging just in front of the coastal region. Gonna leave probably a pretty high pressure factor here, as there's not going to be a whole lot of building cover in this new zone. So it's going to be a battle for real estate for sure. TBSS Aracon able to add a little bit of protection and maybe play a little bit of medic for his fallen teammate Danzo. All the while, the remainder of the team's pushing forward. That blue zone is becoming less and less forgiving here. Aracon in desperate need of some meds, proper utilities, and ammo. And as we approach Stage 4, this is going to become an all-out onslaught. If these teams are able to keep their players up, right now we still have 51 players on the board, and as this zone shrinks more and more, it is going to become an all-out berserker battle fest, just a field of blood, as these teams' numbers are going to drop in a matter of 30, 45 seconds. Just this battle for positioning is going to be forced upon them. Catching eyes on Rafa Esports, Kenny77K, not far off from the myth, the legend, Betho99 of Asteria Esports, already with 4 elims of the team 6 on the board, looking real strong here, and still a full 4-person team. And ladies and gentlemen, you cannot put enough emphasis on being a full 4-person team, especially at an in-game zone. Now, they are not far off from the opposition in XC here. Again, another full 4-piece, and not one bit afraid, putting a hailstorm of bullets outward, but taking a knock in retaliation. Luckily, talk about prime real estate. Look at where Betho sits in this little crater here. A little bit of geographical cover. When building cover becomes few and far between, that's when it really comes down to knowing the geography, the hills, the divots, where you can afford cover. But look, the third party coming inbound from Shockwave as they just crash down on the opposition. This is going to be a real opportunity for Asteria to come in for a third-party push. Dakimi laying out the onslaught. Shotguns, S12s are sounding off in a symphony of buckshots here. And we got Shum able to get healed up here, back and ready to go with that 4x M4 aimed outward at Asteria. But careful, Shum, because there is a looming threat behind you as well in the shape of Far Voice Gaming. And Shum now catching wind of it, realizing that he is the deli meat in a peanut butter and trouble sandwich. Just stuck in between a rock and a hard place with Asteria on one side, Far Voice on the other, and just 4 walls of false security in between. Shum trying to put out some warning nades, making a little bit of a panic factor here for Genows, but you know, with Genows so far away, he's not even a bit intimidated. He says, if you want to use those utilities, by all means, that's your own mistake. I'm ready to keep this pressure on, let you know I'm here if you even think about trying to get out of that building. I gotta say, I like what Far Voice is doing. A lot of great discipline and patience being exercised here. All the while, Raf not far off from KR here. CKRS just holding position with a 3-1 split. Now, that 3-1 split could very likely be the undoing for a team like Rafa Esports if they focus in a little too hard on this outlier cause. All the while, we see Xenocide getting an elim off in the distance. Pardon me, a knockoff in the distance. I don't believe it's converted just yet. And, ooh, there it is, minus. One of the top performing eliminators in the semi-final stages, just putting out another elim for his team. This is Xenocide now, working their way up to their second elim. Now, keep in mind, they have lost half of their starting lineup. Scratch that, 3 members of their starting lineup down to their final hope, and boom. That is a quick story. Getting eyes on Farvoice. Farvoice talking about half their starting lineup down to 2 members as well, and it's definitely been a rough start to the day for Farvoice. Their one elim coming from Minus, who has just been knocked, and is he going to be able to catch this revive before the inevitable push from either KH or Xenocide? It is a no, as Moltro just locks it in, sinking battleships. He calculated the trigonometry and made it rain hellfire. Martha Stewart herself could not have cooked a nade better. Now we find ourselves down to 31 players, and with Xenocide in very close proximity to KH in a 1v2 altercation. All right, Saith. Gonna pull a pretty well thought out plan here, when especially considering the nature of these in-game zones. The way it is set out here, there's not a lot of vehicle cover, not a lot of compound cover to be offered here. So with it being a battle for geography, in the case that they're not able to have it, that vehicle could be all that separates them from a, first place finish to a third place finish. The difference could be that one smoking vehicle, that little bit of bullet cover in an in-game zone. Look at this, Asteria just continuing this absolute onslaught. Now with 9 eliminations. Oh, there's the knock on Betho. Betho has been one of their highest performing players this round, so that is certainly a hit. Can they acquire that revive? No. Oh my goodness. The Xenocide Moltro Nade Demon getting yet another nade elimination on the board, and this time he is the last remaining member for his team. Xenocide at this point is Moltro 32, and he is keeping the name alive with 4 of the team's 5 eliminations. Catching eyes on TBSS, Danzo pushing onward and upward to Tribe Warriors. S12s in hand and a little underthrow frag grenade to try to add a little hellfire pressure. Will it connect? It does not look like it did. All the while, we see Mithra on the other side of the altercation, engaging with Trya, pardon me. Not a lot of damage actually connecting between either of these teams here, just currently, but as Hater cooks this preliminary frag grenade, it could be the tide changer, and it does connect onto Tornado, taking him down to just below half health. But Tornado just locked in tunnel vision, seeing red on the last remaining member of Xenocide, as Moltro swallowing up that 556 bullet damage, taking actually not that much, just about half health himself. And as you can see, Tornado not going to prioritize healing up here before continuing this close quarter altercation with Tribe. All right. The battle of patience continues here as we got TBSS and Tribe just waiting it out. But we were just talking about tunnel vision, and I could very well see this being a little bit counterproductive to both of these teams. We still have several other teams on the board. There's 5 other teams remaining aside from these 2. And along with that, that's going to be 12 other potential enemies with lines of sight on this open area, with Tribe having their back turned to that opposition. Look at this Moltro, the one-man army, just getting caster cursed by me right then and there, and the fire has been put out, but wow, what a one-man performance from Xenocide Moltro. Do not let that man get a high stock of frag grenades, because he knows how to use them well. Quaco of Asterio, keep in mind, Asterio easily the highest performing eliminating team here on the board here for round one, and still 3 members of that team up. Very much a formidable opposition, very much a threat on the playing field still. And operating as a singular unit can be beneficial, but when you're all grouped together like that, one frag grenade can spell trouble, and 2 birds, 1 stone is what happened here, as 2 members of Asteria are downed with 1 nade. Nomi go the last hope here, and just outnumbered, outmanned, outgunned, and outhealthed by the likes of Fnatic Esports. Hade 77 putting outward a cloud of smokes, trying to enshroud his teammate in a little bit of cover and see if he can acquire this revive before the next zone shift. And keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, there's only 1 minute left of stage 6, and we still have 16 players up. This next zone is going to certainly, absolutely make these numbers dwindle down, and quickly. Mithra of Tribe Warriors just swallowing a hefty load of bullet damage, brought down to below 10% health, but still not taken out of the equation just yet. TBSS, one of the last full 4-person teams on the board, but still up and about and kicking. Along with Tribe, this 4v4 continues, ironically enough, without any third-party interruptions. Hader taking a little bit of nade damage, and by a little bit I mean about 60% of his overall health, but not enough to take him out of the equation. "15 players remains, dispersed across 5 teams. As we reach this in-game zone, who is going to set the tone for day 1, round 1 of these PMES community finals?" We got Sayeth here. 4x M4 in hand, and look at his secondary, that P90. Though it is down to its final clip, a P90 is such a difference maker in a close quarter combat altercation. I 100% stand behind that decision to hold on to it down to its final clip. He can make good use of that. We're seeing it off in the distance. It looks like there are some nades being prepared here. It's by Wipe of Rafa Esports, preparing it for none other than KR. This is CKRS here, and getting the line of sight through the window onto Coco. Coco downed like a bad habit, leaving all the pressure onto Sayeth and Kite. And look at this, Kenny with a little bit of overwatch and cover fire as his teammate pushes onward and forward, and just laying this onslaught with the MG3 762 LMG. Ladies and gentlemen, down to 10 players. Wipe living up to the nature of his name and just laying down a full hailstorm of 762 bullets. Kenny retaliating with that DBS, the most unforgiving CQC gun in the game, in my opinion. Shotguns are so overpowered. I still stand behind put them back in the crates, but as they are here, you can't be the one team without them. Kenny pushing forward with that double barrel shotgun, ready to make a really bad sign for the opposition, but it is gonna be a P90 that takes the dub over it. If there's anything a DBS is gonna fall to, a P90 in the right spot, hitting the right area, that might be your best shot. Even then, I still think it's a little bit lucky. But we're down to our final 3 teams. 7 players remain here. looks to be a 2v4v1 to end round one. Okay, well, the battle of patience continues here. Fnatic Esports kind of just weighing their options, trying to put a little bit of pressure here on the field. But as only a two-piece, the numbers aren't really in their favor. They're going to probably, their best bet, in my opinion, would probably be to lay low and let these other two teams duke it out here and maybe use their positioning to their advantage. It is not going to be the case, as Fnatic's getting caster cursed and removed from the equation as I speak about them. And now we are down to our final two teams in a 1v4 altercation here. TBSS up against the likes of CKRS. Can a 1v4 squad wipe happen, or can a caster curse just repeat itself? TBSS taking a very, very well-deserved chicken dinner gold medal first place finish, and doing so beautifully. And here you see it, ladies and gentlemen, TBSS using the numbers in their favor. We said it earlier about halfway through the match, you can't put enough emphasis on being a full four-person team come in-game. And boy, oh boy, did TBSS use those four players perfectly. In poker, we call it the chip stack bully, but outnumbered, outmanned, outgunned, what could CKRS do? But hey, ain't nothing wrong with the second place finish. Just a couple less placement points, but those elims from TBSS here are phenomenal. 11 elims on the board. Pardon me, with a total of, it's got to be, what, 22 points total? Just a phenomenal start here. 12 elims total. Absolutely getting a snowball to turn into a boulder already in round one, day one. This is a way to set the tone. And here we have it. Look at that. CKRS with 10 points to Fnatic's 11. Rafa getting 12 points out of it. Tribe really having a tough start to the day. Even with that third place, 2 kills, 5 points total. Asteria, now listen, Asteria just continuing work that they put forward in the semifinals. A very all-out aggressive team out hunting for the kills. Xenocide having a little bit of a tougher time, and further down the board, Ritzy, one of our top performing teams in the semifinals, getting a turn of the tides here, having a very rough start of match one, day one. Can they change the tides moving forward? Only time will tell. Our top eliminators, Kenny with 5. Oh my goodness, Quaco with 4, Tornado with 4, Danza with 4, and Moltro. Boy, we saw Moltro get those 4. I think majority of those were from frag grenades for Moltro, and I believe 3 of those 4 potentially were done as a solo, as the last remaining member of his team. Talk about a phenomenal one-man performance on that end. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we got our overall standings in, and yes, there you have it. TBSS setting the tone with a healthy 22-point start and a 10-point lead over second place. Rafa literally tied neck and neck at the throats of Asteria Esports with 12 points each, and right at their heels is Fnatic in fourth, only 1 point behind with 11. CKRS very close behind, only 1 point behind Fnatic with 10, and then we see the spread, but the top is close. And that's only match one. We still got tons of PUBG Mobile action ahead of us. 4 more rounds to go today. Ladies and gentlemen, stick around. We're going to be back at you with more PMES Community Finals action in just a few short moments. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. It's time to kick off round 2 of 5, and you already know what time it is. It's time for a little destruction in the desert. It's time to land in the dusty deserts of Miramar. And already we are seeing some action on the board as the winners of round 1 are being taken out of the equation so early on. Already, members of TBSS, all the work that they put, all the momentum they gained in round 1 with those 22 points on the board, all that momentum could be undone here at the start of round 2. And look at that zone shift. It is a northern-oriented zone with literally everyone on the playing field having to migrate. They are all going to have to travel northbound to get into this new zone. It is very unexpected shift for everyone. And that means we are going to potentially be getting some early on altercations as teams meet trying to compete for this southbound real estate in this new zone. I'm talking the Haciendas, the San Martins, the top of the Mesa, maybe a little bit of altercation for the corner of El Azahar, and of course, that central high ground, which can often be a team's undoing as much as it can be an advantage. Oh, and we can see it there on the board on the western half of the zone. Another Elim on the board, and right away, catching eyes on the winners of round 1, TBSS. One member down already, losing one of their starting lineup, brought down to a 3-person team, meaning that they are going to have to play this a bit more reserved. I don't want to say passive, but they are going to have to probably weigh their options a little bit more carefully now, as they just have a little bit less manpower to work their way into in-game. And at the very least, they want to be acquiring some of those placement points if they're not able to acquire a lot of elims. They want to be sure to at least solidify some placement points so as to not undo all the hard work that they made in round 1. Well, we got Oceans on fire, one of the top performing teams in the qualifiers. A little bit of a slower start today. And Xenocide, Sesk, and Moltros putting in some work. We already know that Moltros is the grenade demon of the playing field here, but nades being thrown back at him as Fnatic Esports pushing onwards. Dennis with the Uzi, 2 birds, 1 stone, as he gets both members of Xenocide knocked in one spray, which is going to leave Moltro as the final hope, desperately trying to secure a revive on his fallen teammate, but Dennis keeping that pressure factor on. And boy, oh boy, it is all the pressure on Moltros with a Tommy gun and a crossbow as his secondary. It looks like he was able to secure the revive on Mikey. Mikey with no health, trying to secure the revive on Sesk. Sesk gets revived with a Vector with no extended mag, quickly trying to reorient to the AK-47, but taken out before he's able to stand up. Mikey with a desperate last hope, only a bow and no arrows, and this is a tough one. Mikey now able to get a little bit of 45 ammo for that Tommy gun, and every second wasted here by Dennis is a second Mikey can heal up a little bit more, but ooh, Mikey is down, done and dusted, and Dennis really setting the tone here for Fnatic Esports, especially considering how rough of a start they had to this match, losing 75% of their player base, but Dennis carrying the name on for the team and getting the remainder of the enemy squad out of there. That's 4 elims on the board at the very least. So, we got a little bit more altercations coming off in the distance. It looks to be the likes of Tribe Warriors. Oh, and here we have it already switching our attention. Rafa Esports not far off from Afterlife. Looks like Rafa going to weigh their options and say, hey, you know what? We know the nature of a Miramar match. This is such an open geography map, such an open space that there's so many vulnerable points. In comparison to a map like, let's say, Sanhok, you're just much more likely to fall victim to sniper fire on Miramar. And so you got to be way more alert and prepared of your immediate and your distant surroundings. So it makes a lot of sense what Rafa is doing to sort of play a slower, more reserved approach, at least for the first half of this match. Let some of these numbers dwindle, increase their odds of placement points before really spreading their wings and getting on the aggressive. eyes on Razorino of Afterlife. Razorino, one of two remaining players for his team, Shelby and 5MS, have been eliminated early on. Razor with a 6x Scar L in hand and ready to go. Now, personally, if you put the responsibility of controlling a 6x Scar L spray on me, well, no enemy is going down. But if this guy's got that recoil under wraps, then maybe. Good on you. Celestial in a close quarter combat with none other than Tribe. And boy, the Tribe has won. Accelerate with that beautiful takedown. S18 sounds the same in every language. And Accelerate going to use this opportunity to heal up. The team that moves forward with only 2 players, but 2 elims to their name already. Kokuri Esports getting fairly close in proximity to CKRS. And yes, Techie putting the shots outward. The pressure factor is on. And it doesn't look like CKRS wants that fight just yet. Understandably so, for the same reason that we mentioned for Rafa. All right, Celestial Esports. Well, at least they were able to get those 2 elims on the board before being eliminated from round 2. And that is just going to exemplify, ladies and gentlemen, how crucial each map is. Every map presents a different set of obstacles, different geographies, different landscapes, which means different strategies need to be used. And, what was the ticket on Erangel, what might be the ticket for a map like Sanhok is probably not going to be the first ideal approach on this wide open geographical landscape of Miramar. So the adaptability seems to be the name of the game here. And Far Voice, in the thick of it, it looks like Minus and Seiko taking a lot of damage. Minus knocked. And it looks like his teammate is a decent ways away. Yes, Far Voice exercising what looked to be a split. And in this case, Mindset is going to take full advantage of that. And just using the numbers in their favor. It's a 2-2 split for Mindset as well, but a much better placed 2-2 split. Closer in proximity where they can provide that cover fire for the other 2-person team. And I think that really is going to be what kind of amounted to the finish here. But Seiko still up and about. Far Voice not out of the equation just yet. But Seiko really kind of the opportunity to be the distraction here and let his teammate retreat to cover. And it doesn't look like that's going to be what happens here. Alex still holding position, probably with some assumption that he's been hidden. But no, he is not. As we see CYNT in hot pursuit, we got a chase. And look at that. I mean, we're not at Halloween yet, but the Michael Myers machete finish is real, ladies and gentlemen. Mindset continuing on, and still a full 4-person team. Though barely, they still are. And they got 3 elims already on the board. A nice, healthy start to the match with about 2 minutes left in Stage 2. Catching eyes on Games United Force, getting some early work in on GRX and finding themselves pretty close to TBSS as well. Oh. And a couple warning shots being put out. As you can see off in the Elim feed, the Bat Squad really having a rough match here, as the play zone ends up being what gets one of their members. And ladies and gentlemen, we are down to 17 teams. 3 teams eliminated already in the first 2 stages with 1 minute to go of Stage 2. Ocean's on fire. This was a team that was certainly setting the tone in the semi-qualifiers, but approaching day 1 of finals with a much more patient, reserved approach. Now, could this be advantageous? It could be. Sort of assessing the playing field, seeing how these oppositions are going to adjust their strategies on day 1 before really kind of spreading their wings and flowing into that aggressive state. They want to see how everyone else is going to play it. But I think that something can be said with the 0 elims on the board, along with that first round 1 result, which was not too great for them. So I think, as we approach the concluding portions of round 3, we'll get a much better idea for what sort of playstyle Oceans plans to take here for the remainder of day 1. But look here, we got a little love triangle forming as none other than Shockwave, Oceans, and it looks to be the Bat Squad all in fairly close proximity. We see Shockwave putting out a little bit of warning damage out there. Will it make connection on Ritzy? Pardon me, is that Ritzy? No. That is me being colorblind, ladies and gentlemen. Oceans. It was Oceans. Ocean Squash desperately trying to escape this looming bullet fire, putting outward from Shum with that 4X M416. Not a lot of connecting damage made there, but Shum himself brought down to half health by a little bit of a combination of bullet damage and play zone damage. As we catch eyes on Kukuri Esports Techie, 0 elims for Kukuri at the start of this match. Definitely a bit more reserved of an approach, same as we were speaking for Oceans. But he does have a little bit of a line of sight here on a member of CKRS. Logic just playing a little bit of Overwatch scouting detail. And just like that, CKRS down 1 member. And in the kill feed, Asteria potentially, I'm not sure if that was an elim steal or a entirely separate altercation together, but I feel like it might have been an elim steal. Kukuri now getting a little bit of revenge fire brought back their way, brought down to a 3-person team as their 4th is currently knocked here. Lexi of Ritzy Esports putting out a impressive little burst spray there with the Abacan, but it was actually Crispy who got the knock there on Clutch. Now, Ritzy, we spoke about it at the end of round 1. Unquestionably, one of the top performing teams in the semifinal stage, but ironically enough, with the worst start to the finals of any team here, finding themselves in last place in round 1. Definitely a lot of slack needing to be made up here in round 2, and with the likes of Mindset kind of swarming around them, this could be their opportunity to get those elims, or potentially even hold out for a third-party altercation if Mindset attacks TBSS. And as you can see, CYNT is out on scouting detail, and boy, if he has ever been warned, that's a warning for sure. Don't come back around. You left here with 1 tire and half health less than when you showed up. Probably not best to go back there alone again. All right. Okay. We're down to 17 teams, ladies and gentlemen, spread across 49 players. Keep in mind, that means not many. Oh, Shum down. Pardon me, ladies and gentlemen. I'm getting multiple feeds here. So we got Shum down, back up here. They are not really in any immediate threat here. It looks like that knock must have been from the member they were able to retaliate upon, but catching eyes on Games United Force in the thick of it with none other than, oh my goodness, pardon me, we got OG showing up here. We got On Top versus Bronze Flank, and ooh, you hear it, the S12, so unforgiving. That one and done shot, get down to the ground, get brought back to the prone zone, back to the lobby you go. And speaking of S12, looks like Ocean's using a bit of them as well. It is just a S12 kind of day, apparently, according to the kill feed. S12s and Scars and M4s all day. We're catching eyes here on Squash of Oceans with a line of sight on the opposition of Games United Force. And look at that, Conte making Hellfire rain down, securing one knock. Is this going to lead to a push from Games United Force? I wouldn't be surprised, but look at that Squash, the outlier of his team. That beautiful split. And you can see why Squash was the outlier here and now, able to get that second angle, that second line of sight, scout the enemy location to his teammates, and provide that overwatch. And here we have it. The hovercraft has appeared, ladies and gentlemen, even in the dusty desert. Pape with that DBS ready to go, and you can tell it is going to be a DBS fight. DBS versus DBS, and boy, all that sounds the same in every language. A DBS just says goodbye, regardless of what language you speak. Now, Oceans carrying on with 5 elims, but it did not come without paying a hefty price. They lost Pape, and earlier on, their 4th teammate Unknown. So down to half their starting lineup, 5 elims on the board. I would imagine that the name of the game, at least until the final zone or two, is probably going to be laying low and letting these numbers dwindle down. A bit more dialed back and a bit more patience from Oceans on Fire up until the remainder of the match. That would have been the ideal hope. However, you know, that's always wishful thinking, and unfortunately for them, TBSS caught a line of sight and put a couple warning shots. On top of that, we got CKRS with a potential line of sight on Squash as well. Conte, as you can see, did swallow up a couple bullets worth of damage just to get healed up afterwards. Which begs the question, ladies and gentlemen, when you get down to these later stage zones and you have this sort of distance in between teams with different forms of cover, meaning, let's say one of these teams has this compound cover versus geographical high ground in another, but all this empty space in between, as we are seeing, are these distance altercations fights worth taking on? That is, you know, going to change on a contextual basis. Mindset facing off against none other than Tribe, and boy, oh boy, the Tribe has fallen. Mindset going to carry on as a full 4-person team, and with 5 elims on the board. It's a very strong start to the board. But carrying on with what I was saying, are these distance altercations fights that should be worth taking if you're not prepared to push on the team that you knock? And if you're not able to get that line of sight to secure the thirst on, like, let's say a team on high ground or a team with compound cover, well, then you're just using up your bullets and your utilities that could be useful come in-game. So all these teams are keeping this in consideration and weighing these factors every single time they engage in those distance altercations. Catching eyes on what remains of Oceans on Fire. Well, the Oceans have run half dry, but with 5 elims on the board and all 5 of those elims being spread between the 2 remaining players, Squash and Conte, you know, you just can't rule them off the field. Okay, now look here. Mindset getting a bit of tunnel vision here on the likes of GRS as well as Afterlife, but they're going to need to be very, very careful. Why? Because the likes of, I believe, Ritzy Esports behind them could be their undoing if they are not keeping their head on a 360-degree swivel. Now, Ocean's under fire with potentially an unintentional third-party assist to Kukuri. And it's going to be the third-party push coming in now as Oceans did all the hard work to get those elims, and Kukuri so prepared to steal it from him. But look at this. Oceans Conte really being the pinnacle performer here in this altercation with that outliers positioning, just able to keep CKRS a bit multitasked. Now, granted, the teammates for Conte are pushing up here once again. So that pressure factor and Conte's outlier positioning could be useful once again. But it looks like Conte going to use this opportunity to reunite with his teammates and keep the pressure on. And, you know, you just never expect to see a hovercraft in the desert, but in PUBG Mobile, anything can happen. All right, Conte S12 in hand. A couple warning shots, but ooh, he's swallowing a lot more damage than he has been able to dish out. Squash preparing a frag grenade as well. We see the opposition with an S18 in hand, but not a single opportunity to use it as that frag grenade connects perfectly. And now Ocean's looking okay here. 3 elims to their name. Oh, pardon me, 8 elims to their name. That was Squash with 3. 8 elims to their name, and still a two-person team. As unsettling as the two-person team sounds, they've been climbing up in those elims as that two-piece. All the elims on the team are between those two players. So as I said earlier, yeah, they're not really a numbers team right now, but boy, they're really making the absolute most of these elims as a two-piece. All the while, TBSS still locked in, tunnel vision with mindset, and you can see it. We got members of Afterlife just trying their best to get that third-party nade to crash down. Just any potential reason to push in. And here we have it. Here's the push. Afterlife kind of weighing their options, and it looks like maybe a little bit premature on the push here. As we can see it, Razorino not quite making it to the mark, and his only teammate player out of the equation, Afterlife, ironically sent to the Afterlife. And Mindset down to their final hope right now, San, as their Jin here is knocked. And I don't see a revive being that likely for Mindset. However, for the likes of Rafa, Gentleman is playing medic duty to his fallen teammate, Kemi. Asteria, a bit of a tougher go of it this time around. Remember, Asteria really thriving on that full 4-person team. Looks like they had a couple members knocked. But you know who doesn't? Ritzy. And look at how they are exercising this split, this 2-1-1 split. This is how you play bully factor. This is how you use all 4 players to the most in a PUBG Mobile Miramar in-game. Crispy scouting around, relaying all that critical information, and Zebby becoming a birthday candle for me here as that boy is set on fire with the molly and back to the lobby. Squash of Oceans on fire, keeping the pressure on Ritzy, and it does look to be a takedown on Ritzy. If they are down now to a 3-person team here, potentially. Yep. Mito down and out, leaving it down to Lexi, Crispy, and Rehan. Conte and locking it in, calculating the trigonometry, trying to sink Crispy's battleship with that frag grenade. But it is not going to be enough going off of sound alone there. Rehan bringing that vehicle cover into his teammates. Conte with a little bit of vehicle security of his own in that hovercraft. And here we have it, ladies and gentlemen. A little bit of a lay of the land. A 2-2 split for Rafi Esports. TBSS, a 3-person team, but with a bit of geographical crater cover. And then not far off, the likes of Oceans on Fire. A little bit less geographical cover, but with a hovercraft to kind of keep that pressure factor on. And a couple bits of warning fire put outward from Rafa down onto the likes of Ritzy. All the while, Shockwave going after Asteria. Rehan of Ritzy trying to reunite with his teammates, but taking a lot of damage in the process. Conte somehow able to drive right by the likes of Ritzy, too distracted by TBSS to turn their attention to Conte, and boy, oh boy, was he lucky of that. Squash versus Rehan. Rehan brought down to below half health, and boy, it's Kate from behind, the off angle, able to finish that last bit of damage. TBSS keeping the pressure on Rafi. We get the knock on Gentleman and trying to secure that thirst. Conte holding position, letting these numbers dwindle down from the security of that hovercraft. Donzo with a little bit of cover here being from that crate drop as TBSS squares off with Rafi in a 2v2 altercation here. Looks like Tornado might be a little bit further out, so potentially a 2-1 split for them. Danzo with a money nade, perfectly angled, perfectly timed, and boy, could not have been better placed Danzo with that MG3 762 LMG and about to face a little bit of nade damage of his own if he doesn't keep moving forward, and he does avoid it. Minimal damage taken altogether, and ladies and gentlemen, we are down to our final 5 teams spread across 12 players here. And honestly, Shockwave and Asteria with a real opportunity to just lay low on each other and let these other teams duke it out. Every team you survive longer than now is an extra point or 2 of placement points. And that is just free numbers on the board. TBSS, Danzo sent back to lobby. Rafi with still a full 4-person team. A knock on one of their teammates, but what looks to be an attempted revive by Kemi here. Will they be able to secure it? It doesn't look to be a push from TBSS, so I think they will be able to get their 4th member back up in the equation. And interestingly enough, TBSS really choosing their positioning perfectly. That crater is probably one of the only bits of geographical cover that's giving a somewhat of a 360-degree concealment remaining on this playing field. There's, I don't believe, much or any compound cover afforded in this new zone. So TBSS really did pick it pretty well here. And just with that zone shift, finding themselves lucky. We'll just call it a little bit of luck. Sometimes in PUBG Mobile, it's got to be a balance of skill, experience, prediction, and just a smidge of that luck factor to add in for the perfect cocktail. All right, Squash of Oceans on fire. About to be squashed himself, but making it to a little bit of cover position here where he's able to go prone and hopefully heal up before any utilities crash on him or before any push comes in. Shockwave with some very, very ambitious nades. If these nades do connect, I will probably freak out. But here we see it, an aggressive push from Shockwave as Lux is firing outwards and dealing out minimal damage, but swallowing a really just punishing amount in retaliation. Definitely needing to heal, and his remaining teammate, the driver, brought down to the prone zone, knocked. This is a tough factor here for Shockwave because it very likely could amount to a push either from Oceans or Rafi. I will say that push would probably be a mistake from either team, but we've seen impulsive decisions come in-game time and time again, and Shockwave just not able to regain that momentum as Rafa utilizing that high ground perfectly. Kemi just taking them right back down as soon as they're brought back up, but a little bit of karma striking Kimmy down as well. And Oceans is not going to wait. The Oceans are flooding on top of you, and here comes a very risky push here by Oceans. It looked like they were actually going to be pushing elsewhere, but had a last-minute change of heart to instead turn attention to TBSS. And it looks like it may have actually worked out. But in doing so, they are brought down to their final hope, Conte, and Conte alone remains. The Oceans have run practically dry here in this desert, but Conte's still up and about. And ladies and gentlemen, we got Conte versus Gentleman. Looks to be a battle of utilities here. Any easy... Oh my gosh! That nade taking Gentleman down to what should have been a knock. But Gentleman given a little bit of grace and surviving by the hair on his chin. Maybe 1 to 2% of overall health. And oh my goodness. Oceans does it. Conte as a solo, able to seal the deal. Let's have a look. That first frag grenade taking Gentleman down to 1 to 2% max on overall health. Gentleman thanking his stars to not have had the end of the match right there, given that second shot at life. But unfortunately, Conte just a little too locked in with those nades, and Gentleman with no health to speak of. could not afford a single bullet of damage. And Conte exercising it perfectly. This is an Oceans on Fire well-deserved chicken dinner. Goodness. Going off of sound alone, just sound cues, when you don't even need your vision, you got that spatial audio figured out down to a science. And look at this, Oceans on Fire with 27 points from round 2 alone. And looky here, Rafa Esports, 15 points total. Shockwave with 11. TBSS in 4th with 7. Asteria in 5th with 6. And Ritzy in 6th with 7. We got GR with 1 total. Mindset in 8th with 6. 9th going to Afterlife with 3. Pardon me, I'm guessing these are just team slots with their total elims there. But here we have it, our most elims on the board. Not a bit surprising to see Conte there. 9 elims, 1080 damage, a perfect 1080. I'm surprised we haven't seen more damage out of it, because Conte was on an all-out warpath from start to finish. Now take a look at his teammate Squash with 8 elims, the second highest elims, and even more damage on the board. Oceans on Fire really thriving on the desert map of Miramar. We got 4 elims going to Accelerate, etc., etc. Well, the overall standings here as they are, Oceans on Fire taking the lead, but just by a mere 2 points over TBSS. TBSS, remember, not a terrible finish for them in round 2 either, but keep in mind, with only 2 points behind the heels of the Kings of the Hill, Oceans on Fire, there is no real cushion zone there for Oceans. And same can be said for TBSS, as Rafa holding 3rd place, only 2 points behind 2nd place of TBSS. Asteria with a little bit of hunger on their mind, hungry to catch up, and I think they can do it moving forward. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's 2 matches down, done and dusted. We've seen our teammates here on the very first map of Erangel before we migrated out to that desert destruction of Miramar. Well, we'll be back in just a few short moments with round 3 with a little bit of jungle mayhem in Sanhok. Ladies and gentlemen, stick around. We'll be back in just a few short moments with round 3 of the PMES Community Finals. Be back soon. Let me just go ahead and do this. We are back. We are back. We are back with round 3 of the day here. We've seen our participants on the first map of Erangel before we migrated to a little destruction in the desert, and now kicking off round 3, a little bit of rumble in the jungle. Now, ladies and gentlemen, remember what I said in round 2. What was the ticket? What was the ticket for, a map like Erangel, or maybe the number 1 strategy for a map like Miramar? Probably not going to be the ideal approach for the lush, condensed, congested map of Sanhok. But we're already kicking things off, so let's go ahead and get into it. A little bit of music for the start of it, but we are going to go ahead and see what we got going here for round 3. Let's get it. Already at Ruins Afterlife, squaring off with none other than the opposition of Shockwave. Shockwave going for it, but Razor Reno just clutching for the team. All 3 of his teammates taken down, done and dusted, but only for Nox, and Razor Reno able to pull off the squad wipe and bring all 3, ideally, potentially bring all 3 back to life. And with a healthy 4 elims to start round 3 off, this is a great beginning for Afterlife. Even though they clutched it by the hair on their chin, the numbers don't lie. And we can see here, it is going to be a fairly centralized zone here, divided into 3 sections by water. Kukuri not far off from the opposition of Afterlife. Now, Afterlife could be thrown out of the frying pan into the fire if they're not able to get properly looted and healed up from this previous altercation in Ruins before the looming push from Kukuri. But if you look at that map, Kukuri pretty spread out here. All the while, there it is. We got Ritzy, getting caster cursed. Ritzy getting caster cursed as we see Miramar getting a takedown before swallowing a little bit of karma and retaliation brought back upon him. Bat Squad, 0 elims on the board, and we see Ninja Boy a ways away from his teammates here. It's going to be a risky start here, but in the kill feed, mindset, needing to get their mind a little bit set more. As you can see, getting taken down by Fnatic. And ooh, this is just an onslaught for a start of a match. In comparison to the slow pace of rounds 1 and 2, this is what you can expect for a Sanhok. It being a much smaller map and just a high congestion area. It always leaves the potential for these early game altercations that you got to keep in mind. There's so much cover to be had here on Sanhok. There's natural cover to take everywhere. Trees to hide behind, grass to hide inside, boulders to get behind, and a million buildings in between. So there's a lot of hiding spots. You need to be on the lookout for snakes like you're in a real jungle. You're never safe in Sanhok. Oh, and Mindset learning it the hard way as they are taken out of the equation very early on. Second team eliminated already. Oceans under fire. The winners of round 2 potentially in a world of trouble from the likes of OG Esports. And now you can see it. Dorado cooking up a utility as it's going to be a trade of utilities. Hellfire thrown each way. Conte, the clutch performer of round 2, knocked here, as well as another member of Oceans Unknown is down and dusted. This is going to bring Pape down as well. Oceans is down to squash alone. There is 1 Oceans remaining. Oceans 1 with George Clooney. Dorado pushing in. Look at the spread that Oceans is taking on Squash. A perfect 3-person split And this is a strategy that I coined it the boa method, like a boa snake, but I'm not sure what the terminology is, the official strategy, but just constricting on your opponent from multiple angles at the same time. It's a pressure factor, it's a numbers factor, and ultimately Oceans, all that progress made in round 2, so much of that progress has just been undone here before the end of stage 1 of round 3. All right. Catching eyes on OG. Now, I really kind of like what I'm seeing here. This more reserved, just take your time, get properly looted. You've already got 4 elims on the board, which is a very healthy start for a stage 1, considering you haven't lost any members yet. Now, OG, a team that really does need to kind of step things up here for day 1. The first 2 rounds of performances kind of bringing them below the first bracket, the first half bracket here in overall placement. So a lot of slack in the rope to make up for. And I think they're off to a great start here for round 3 in changing those tides. Well, talking about members of Afterlife, they have not really gotten much space from where they landed at Ruins. And Kokuri still with a pressure factor there, but there is a third-party threat potential, and that would be from the Western Ocean, the west side of this zone, where Xenocide approaching the coast from the water. And I think you can probably assume that Afterlife is not expecting a boat rotation, or as we call that in North America, a boatation. All right. Well, CKRS. A bit of a slow start for them in round 3, which is perfectly okay. If anything, it might be to their advantage, especially considering how many of these teams were thrown right back to the lobby, or how many members of teams were thrown back to the lobbies. As you see, there's 60 players on the board. Only 17 teams remain here. Kokuri, a bit of a slow approach and understandable. Kokuri definitely having a little bit of slack to make up for themselves. I think they find themselves maybe 12th place, 13th place, somewhere around there overall after round 2. So definitely a lot of ground to be making up. And I think if they're not altogether comfortable in a full aggressive strategy, then this is the right move. Letting these numbers dwindle a bit, kind of improving the odds of getting more placement points, and maybe saving the aggressive gameplay for, let's say, stage 4, zone 4, or later. All right. Well, we were talking about Kokuri kind of taking their time with it, but when the opportunity presents itself on a platter, it's hard to say no to. And Teki is no exception, as just Arakan of TBSS presenting themselves as a sacrificial offering. And this is going to put a real hurt on TBSS. This spread that they are taking it's somewhat of the same story. You know, it's not quite working to their favor, and you can see if you're not comfortable in your 1v2s and your 1v3s, well, maybe it's probably better, at least in the first half of the match, to not do such a split approach. This is all going to be contextual based on what teams are comfortable with, what their, particular strengths are. And, say if you're a team like Asteria, absolutely that spread approach could be beneficial, but given Kokuri's performance thus far, I didn't see it being the right move. Well, Ritzy Esports, 3 elims on the board, but with Rayhan knocked and having a low ground disadvantage to Tribe Esports here, it is going to be a pressure factor, especially considering the space between Rayhan and the members still up. I don't see that being a revive they can get to without taking this fight on with Tribe first. And case in point, Hater able to secure the thirst then and there. All right, well, Tribe accelerate with the high ground, but allowing Lexi that slight flank from the low ground, and she's able to make the most of it. Lexi retaliated on by Mithra, and unfortunately, Mithra had that sliver of line to get the thirst as well, or the knock as well. Crispy, one of 2 remaining members up for Ritzy Esports here. It's down to him and Mito Ma, and pressure is looming here, not just from opposing teams, but from that blue zone as well. Remember what I said in round 1, as is the nature of PUBG Mobile Esports. As this match progresses, that zone is going to become less and less forgiving, less and less real estate to move around on. These players are going to be forced into the thick of action here. All right, well, we got Touch Me of Tribe. Now one of the 2 remaining members up. Tribe with only 1 elim to their name. This is a tough position to be in, considering that it's only stage 3, and there's still so many teams on the board. 51 players remain on the field. They are a decent ways away from any possibility of placement point gain. So it's going to really boil down to patience here for them and laying low and under the radar. Well, talk about under the radar. We got OG Esports' Shats here coming in for a swim revive here on Shakalaka. And it looks like it will be done successfully here, as their closest threat is going to be members of the Nameless. Nameless with some revives to prioritize as well, as Kutu is down. And we are approaching the end of stage 3 here, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see, King of Nameless trying to get a little bit of overwatch and cover fire to ensure Ketu is not thirsted here. Ketu going to try his best to make a desperate crawl back to the safety of his teammates, but this crawl is through vulnerable territory here. Dorado not too concerned with securing that thirst just yet, but one properly placed nade could be a horrible change in the tides here for TL here. And oh, Dorado taken down. This is huge. This is absolutely huge. This could be that extra little grace that the Nameless needed to get Ketu back up and fall back to the remainder of his team, or even push on to Shakalaka. I think the push makes more sense at this point, with Linus being the off-angle holder, the outlier, getting that second line of sight and keeping the pressure on Shakalaka. And boom, Shakalaka down, done, and dusted. That candle is burning bright, ladies and gentlemen. And the Nameless making a name for themselves right here and now as they push continuously on OG, with Shats getting a knock once again on Ketu. Ketu spending more time down on the knock zone than he is up and pushing. We got Xenocide not far off from the likes of Farvoice, but Farvoice has a bit of a coin in their back pocket in this spread that they have. They've got 4 different lines of sight on their opponent with some high ground for certain members. Nameless still struggling to get this finish on OG, as Shats down below half health, but facing a potential nade damage, but does not connect. We are about to end stage 3, and stage 4 begins, meaning the zone shift is looming. Damage is about to increase, and real estate is about to lessen. Well, Afterlife still in the equation, very much so. 3 members still up and doing work in the distance. All the while, Shats just trying his very best to make this final stand. DBS M4 in hand, and for what could be a close quarter push from the Nameless, a DBS could be a squad wiper. But talk about a squad wiper. Ketu with the close quarter combat annihilator, that UMP 45 in hand as well. Oof. The numbers are in the Nameless's favor. Shats very, very much at a disadvantage. And oh, unfortunately, his teammate on top is on bottom as he is knocked from the warehouse. Now Shat's really in a world of hurt, outnumbered, outmanned, and outgunned. And yep, just like that, in that brief moment, it looks like that was all it took for Lara of Nameless to finish Shat's off with that DBS. Once again, Kukuri still in the equation. 4 elims on the board and able to get the revive on their 4th teammate. Still a full 4-person team, very much so. And the spread before our eyes. 4 teams in sight here. Farvoice, Kukuri, Xenoside, and our solo from CKRS. All right. We got Sup of Farvoice holding the compound cover, but with a geographical high ground going to Afterlife, it begs the same question as last match. What do you guys think is the right move here? Compound cover with low ground or geographical high ground, meaning just hilltop cover and hillcrest cover? I think in this case, neither. I don't see much of an opportunity to secure a thirst on either of these, meaning if Sup is knocked, crawling 2 steps to the left or right is going to put him out of that line of thirst sight from the window. And if Afterlife from the hilltop is knocked, just crawling behind that hill crest out of the line of sight. So you're not able to get the thirst without a push. If you're not ready to commit to a push, is that a fight worth taking? Probably not. But Sup of Farvoice able to do work on multiple teams and just smacked me in the face for what I'd call me wrong. But ooh, a little bit of karma as Sup is brought down to the knocked zone and retaliation here. But in doing so, he was able to get a knock on not just a member of Shockwave, but the previous team as well. And Seiko of Seiko getting a knock on Xenoside as well, it looks like. All the while, Celestial Esports eliminated alongside GR. And this is going to be a tough one for them to recover from with so little elims to speak of. I believe it said 1 for them. Xenoside eliminated as well. 1 elim on the board and missing that bracket for placement point. Oh, pardon me, not missing the bracket for placement points whatsoever. Going to get a couple placement points on the board. Now look here, ladies and gentlemen. Games United Force with a absolute berserker performance. No matter what happens for the remainder of this match, you look at this kill count, 13 elims on the board. This is the Games United Force that we were hoping to see in rounds 1 and 2, but boy, did they show up for a little rumble in the jungle. And look here, Bronx Blank leading the team in elims with 5 of the team's 13 in his name. And they are at the throats of not just KCRS, CKRS, but TBSS as well. Tornado gonna have to face the wall of blue that is pushing in. And yep, you bet that was heard from the cliff edge from CKRS, reorienting that nade right on down to the water, realizing that there is a potential easy elim point there, but look at what it's doing. Giving Bronx Flank and his team the chance they need to catch him unawares, and they add onto it, take full advantage, and that is GUF working their way up to 14 elims and a full 4-person team with only 3 teams remaining. This is a powerhouse performance. Now, with eyes on Farvoice, let's not take credit away to where credit is due. Farvoice also a full 4-person team. 5 elims is nothing to wag your finger at, but up against Games United Force in context, it is going to be still a lesser performance. Now, with Afterlife really kind of in the thick of it here, a tough call for Afterlife. Unfortunately for them, they have caught some attention and focus from Farvoice in a situation where they're outnumbered, outmanned, and outgunned. The best possible hope for Afterlife would have been to let Farvoice duke it out with members of GUF and hope upon hopes for a third party on whoever came out victorious, granting them those extra placement points and maybe even a high ground position as well as a weakened opponent. But unfortunately, it looks like the attention is on them. The advantage that they do have in their favor is about to be thrown out the window, though. That high ground cushion is kind of thrown out the window from this zone shift. And here we have it, the forced rotation from Afterlife. For better or for worse, they don't have a choice. They are going to try it as best as they can. And here comes the hailstorm of bullets. Shelby barely surviving that. Brought down to about 20% of his or her overall health. And players down, leaving Shelby as the final hope. Shelby with no health, and it's going to be Bronx Blank with his 7th elim and the team's 16th. And now a perfect 4v4. Far Voice versus Games United Force to end round 3. And look at Games United Force feeling full synergy, feeling full confidence, feeling full momentum, and just aggressing upon Far Voice. Far Voice is also a full 4-person team, but just much more reserved, and understandably so. Games United Force would have probably been as well before this match, but look at them. Everything is going right for them this match, and the nades just crashing exactly where they should. The trigonometry, the math has been calculated, and they are sinking battleships as Alex is down, leaving it up to Seiko minus. Oh boy, and here we go. Seiko coming in, DBS ablazing and ready to make magic happen, taking his opponent down. He's down to 1/3 of his overall health himself, but look at him, an absolute powerhouse performance. And any way you look at it, Far Voice really changing the tides onto GUF, and now Bronx in a world of hurt. Yep, Bronx is the final hope now for Games United Force. What was a perfect 4v4, an even fight, has left the powerhouse performance team down in a one-man team against three angry members, potentially a revive on Alex, so potentially 4 members of Far Voice coming in. And that is that. The numbers don't lie. Outnumbered, outmanned, outgunned, and that Far Voice cry can be heard from miles away. This is a beautiful chicken dinner gold medal finish for them. And look at them coming in confidently and aggressively as they picked off Games United Force one by one. And when all that remained was their highest performing team member, Bronx Blank, well, they swarmed on them like mosquitoes in a North Carolina summer, and that is that. Far Voice with a chicken dinner first place finish, round 3. All right, look at this. Overall ranking of 5th now, and this is 19 points, 9 elims. That tells me something right away. 9 elims means that they were out on the all-out aggressive, looking for people from starts, and as well able to keep their numbers all the way into the top 2 to get that placement points of those 10 extra placement points as well. That's a 19-point gain alone from just round 3. Far Voice really changing the tides right then and there. And look at these top 5 elims. Nothing can be taken away from Games United Force. Bronx Blank with a powerhouse performance. Look at this. 7 elims, but only 456 damage, meaning this guy was able to make the most of elim steals. But Far Voice just really setting the tone there. Games United Force, though, with such a powerhouse performance that it's got to be more points in that round alone. Any way you look at it, there's the spread. Shockwave still just so much to ground to cover up. Oceans, all that work from round 2 undone. Can they make it up as we move into round 4? Or are teams like Far Voice going to be able to keep this momentum going? Well, here we have it. The overall scores as they currently stand, and goodness, is this a close fight for the top 4 bracket. TBSS holding the King of the Hill first place positioning, but by only 2 points over Oceans on Fire. And that's included, Oceans didn't have the easiest round 3 there either, so that's a pretty impressive statement. Now, Rafa in third place, only 2 points behind the heels of Oceans on Fire and Games United fourth, with such a high elim game here in round 3 that they worked their way up all the way to fourth place with 28 points. Ladies and gents, that's round 3 down, done, and dusted. We'll be back at you with round 4 of the PUBG Mobile PMEC Community Finals. Just a few short moments. Pardon me, PMES. Where did the C come from? PMES Community Finals in just a few short moments. Be back soon. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back, welcome back to round 4 of the PUBG Mobile Community Series final. Pardon me. We are left here back where it all began, a little bit more Erangel and a perfectly centralized flight path here. So let's go ahead and get into the thick of it. All right, early droppers. We see Seiko dropping on down and looking like it's going to be a little bit of North George Zarky safety here for Far Voice, which is a pretty smart start after a pretty powerhouse performance in the previous match. Already a little bit of potential altercation forming in the north center portion of zone towards Severny, or of the map, towards Severny. It looks like Kukuri alongside the opposition of CKRS. All the while, we are seeing Xenoside dropping down just outside the outskirts of Milta, and they might not be alone. They might have the likes of Fnatic to worry about, as well as Ritzy. Looks like GRX could also be in a potential fight here with none other than Afterlife. Catching wind on Oceans. Oceans really doing pretty well even after a struggling round 3. After such a powerhouse performance in round 2, finding themselves, I believe, fourth or maybe even in the top 4. We'll say that's a safe place. So really not too much slack in the rope lost in round 3 for Oceans. And so I do like to see this start here, that slower start, just getting properly equipped. And ideally, I think what worked for them in round 2 could probably work for them here as well. But no time to talk about that, as Afterlife thrown into the thick of it down here in Pachinki with GRX. We got Razorino approaching Zabi here. Player holding a little bit of Overwatch and scouting information with that AK-47 in hand, and Shelby just alongside him. A little hardcore parkour as player just hopping from window to window, trying to catch an off angle on either GRX member. And this is such a tricky close quarter altercation when you get down into the congestion of the city of Pachinki. So much building cover. You can have opponents just one building away, just a few feet away, and still no way of getting that knock or that thirst, that nade in there properly placed. You have to get that ready for that push in certain situations. And so that juxtaposition between choosing when to push or when to try to just hold off a few seconds longer, it's so always a tricky decision in Pachinki. Especially if it's even numbers. Now, if I'm seeing this correctly, GRX may only have 2 members there. Now, if the 2 members have already been eliminated from Afterlife, I didn't see that. But if they have, then regardless, that's a number disadvantage for GRX that Afterlife probably does not know about if they didn't acquire them themselves. So that could explain the hesitation on the push. No time to waste. Fnatic Esports down at the satellite area. Their closest threat would be in the low ground area nearby in the form of TBSS, just utilizing some Novo crate looting time. But with Dennis catching a line of sight with that Mosin 6x combo, it could spell a little bit of trouble. I do see it being a situation of, without an immediate thirst, any TBSS member could probably find cover behind that crate after they're knocked before that Mosin gets reloaded. So without a push, I don't see that resulting in any thirst. Catching wind once again on Seiko of Far Voice and his teammate Alex as they pull this flank rotation around the outskirts of Tribe, rotating their way into this zone from probably right around shooting range area. And every man here has got their own vehicle. Maybe, well, three men had their own vehicle. Going to be a vehicle rotation. kind of spreading out their assets as best as they can. If they're comfortable in those altercations, then it might pan out in their favor. But GRX, the two-person team, doing everything they can, but outnumbered, outmanned, outgunned, and a absolute thunderstorm of nades just raining inside that house from Afterlife to seal the deal. And just like that, Afterlife really spreading their wings here for this Erangel round 4 match. Okay, and here we have it. There it is. Look at the slow-mo. Oh my gosh, Zabi, there was nothing he could have done other than abandon his teammate and try to escape. And Zabi was not about to take the coward's way out, so he took exit through way of frag grenade. All the while, Kukuri Esports off in the distance. All right, catching wind on the likes of Rafa Esports, currently sandwiched right now as we speak between multiple oppositions. You got CS Esports to one side. Yeah, they're just the deli meat in a peanut butter and trouble sandwich and kind of forced into immobility, kind of stuck in this position here. Shockwave coming dangerously close to Far Voice as Matana putting some shots outwards towards Seiko, but Sup with the off angle. Matana with the quick reflex reaction, securing some the knock on Seiko. Mine is desperate to try to join his teammate Sup. Matana down to the prone zone, leaving it in the hands of Shum and Luxus to carry on the name for Shockwave unless they're able to secure these revives. But Far Voice, hungry for a thirst, and swarming on the opposition, leaving Luxus and Shum in a world of trouble. And I think Shum may be further away. So Luxus in a 1v3, potentially 1v4 altercation if they can get the revive on Seiko. This is going to require a shotgun to even have a sliver of hope of squad wiping. And even then, he's up against Sup S18. This is a tough one. And he cannot afford a single ounce of error here. Awaiting this inevitable push from Far Voice, but Sup keeping them guessing with utilities. Frag grenades bouncing left and right off the wall. Lux is trying to retaliate with nades of his own, but he is in limited supply, but realizing where they were, I think he picked the right time to push, but unfortunately for him, the pressure factor built up, and that S812 bullet spray did not quite connect the way it should have. All right, well, here comes Sup just carrying on here as a two-piece. I believe, as a two-piece here. We got Shockwave and a third-party threat looming in the shape and form of Tribe Esports. Tribe holding the hill crest. Minimal zone damage taken so far, but as this match progresses, that might become less and less of an option. Catching wind on Zeno's side as they square off against none other than CKRS. We got Sesk trying to make a lucky Hellfire nade crash down. Can it connect? Well, Sayeth swallowing a lot of nade damage, brought down to half health, and that's all that his teammate needs to push in with that S12 to finish the deal. But with Skaz here coming in from exactly where the opposition was, with some utilities of his own, now Xenocide finding themselves as the fish in the barrel here. With a knock on Coco, it's going to bring CKRS down to a two-piece of Kite and Skaz here, and this could be the ample reason to bail, if anything, especially with a looming third-party threat coming around the Hillcrest from Ritzy Esports. Sesk trying to make the most of it, but Mikey, his teammate, S12 in hand, not able to capitalize. Moltro, the nade hound himself, coming after Skaz. S12 blazing, and oh goodness, surviving with maybe 2 to 3% of his overall health to spare, but that's all you need sometimes. And Moltro gonna try to secure this revive on his fallen teammate Mikey. All the while, Ritzy's swarming upon Xenocide. And look at that, Crispy taking Mahi out of the equation with a frag grenade, leaving Moltro and Mikey in a world of hurt here as a full 3-piece swarming on him. Pardon me, a full 4-piece of Ritzy Esports swarming on the likes of Xenocide. All right. This isn't a totally handicapped altercation, though, for Xenocide. 3 people, a 3v4 is very doable, but as I say it, Xenocide retaliating and evening the odds, giving us a 3v3 against the likes of Ritzy here. And look at this, Sesk with a real opportunity for a flank rotation that Ritzy does not expect. Crispy is not paying attention. Ooh! Oh my goodness. Crispy still up, Sesk taken down from the off angle behind. Was it a third-party attack? I didn't see, but regardless, it's all that Ritzy needs. Yes, it was a third party from none other than Bat Squad, but Crispy capitalizing, securing the thirst, and getting the Elam point all the same. If they are able to secure this revive, it's a fair trade. 4 Elams on the board at the cost of 1 player. I'd take that trade. I'd say I'd take that trade. Fair. All the while, Nameless and Celestial squaring off in the distance as Asteria prepares for an altercation with what could be Oceans under fire. Now, Asteria versus Oceans would be huge, as those are 2 very high-performing teams in this event. It could be a huge game changer for the overall results. All right. Well, Oceans in dangerously close proximity to the likes of Afterlife. Let me rephrase that. Afterlife in dangerously close proximity to Oceans. Outnumbered, outmanned, and outgunned. Getting eyes on the Bat Squad. We got Poison readily equipped with that AUG-23. Pretty easy to control your distance shots with an AUG 6X combo. So with that line of sight on Ritzy Esports, it's probably going to be about biding the time and waiting for the right moment to strike. If Bat Squad does not plan to swarm and push this knock, is this worth taking? Probably not. Especially against a hyper-aggressive team like Ritzy proved themselves to be in the semi-qualifiers. We got a altercation just on the southwestern portion outside of the zone. Shockwave shooting in on the smoke pile that is put down by Farvoice, but Farvoice, once again, the deli meat in a peanut butter and truffle sandwich, and there is the other side of the sandwich right there. Rafi Esports with Gentleman just picking them off like fish in a barrel. Fnatic Esports naded down and dusted. Down goes Pajta, leaving Dennis as the final Fnatic remaining on the playing field, and he does... Oh, pardon me. He is still up very much in the mix with Tribe, with Mithra preparing a utility from the low ground cliff. We got Hater scouting info here, and Dennis trapping himself essentially in this little shack. I always say that those four walls can provide a false sense of security, but look at Dennis, the jump shot, DBS, one and done, and ooh, thankfully, Tribe's teammate from the low ground Accelerate putting the work in, getting the first finish, and then swallowing a hefty load of retaliatory damage, but able to secure that knock too. Desperate to heal up before facing the rest of this altercation, and all the while Celestial and TBSS at each other's throats. Tryout, holding position, about 20% of his overall health remaining and still not healed. Juicy attempted revive by the teammate Vexy. Will it happen? It looks like Celestial will be able to revive their teammates, bring themselves back up to a full 4-piece for this altercation with TBSS. Tryout with a monster nade. Oh my gosh. That nade from Tryout from behind that shack. Unbelievable nade of the day so far. Uncomparably. Goose goes down. Celestial finding themselves brought down to a 3-piece, having to weigh their odds. And honestly, with Goose being the only member of the team who has not been able to put up an elim on the board so far, if they have to bail, it might be the time to do so. But as you see, Galley sticking to his guns here and suffering the consequences as a result. No one wants to be the guy to abandon a teammate, but as you can see, it might very well spell the end for both Juicy and Vexy. Vexy just really, and once again, Goose is down again. So was this worth it? No. The attempted revive amounted in losing an extra member. So as I said, yeah, no one wants to be the one to cut their losses and abandon teammates, but sometimes it's objectively the smart move. But TBSS making all that noise and commotion on the playing field, bringing a little too much attention to themselves, and it spelled their undoing then and there. So ladies and gentlemen, we're down to 10 teams here, spread across only 34 people. We got still on the playing field 7 full 4-person teams. Is that correct? It is. This is shaping up to be a powerhouse in-game. Catching eyes on Asteria Esports with Betho. Mini 14 in hand. You don't often see the Mini 14 DMR used, but when you do, you know someone's ready to rapid tap that like they're Cappy Gaming. We got AST, what's his name here? M4 DBS combo and just holding position, letting this zone stage wear itself out, letting the numbers dwindle. All the while, Kakuri and Ocean squaring off in the distance. Shockwave fairly close in proximity, not just to Nameless, but Ritzy as well. And potentially to Rafa. We got Dakimi. M4 S12 holding position in the garage, trying to get a little preliminary vehicle damage on Ritzy's escape plan here, and if they are able to do so, that could really put a pressure factor on Ritzy. But the advantage Ritzy has is that they are already in this new zone, so at the very least, they have a bit of time afforded to them. OG Esports Dorado catching the flank off angle on Kukuri, and that is it. Dorado barely able to pull that out by the hair on his chin. About 5% of his overall health was remaining and in a smoking vehicle, but he was able to secure it nonetheless. Now OG kind of thrown out of the frying pan into the fire, as you can see, as Oceans is dangerously close by, but look at that. Shaz with a beautiful nade to take Unknown down, leaving it down to Conte and Pape here. Pape dangerously close on health, but Conte just turning the OG opposition into bowling pins as he runs them over like a bowling ball from hell. And now Dorado, still with a little bit of high ground in his name, gonna try to do a little bit of revenge here, just like that. Driving into the hellfire for the finish, but knocking himself in the process. Oof, I bet he wishes that wasn't gonna be seen on broadcast, but there it is. Regardless, he was able to clutch that out. OG Esports with 5 elims to their name and carrying on as a full 3-person team. They are finding themselves outside of this new zone, and here comes the wall to shift inwards. Time is of the essence, and now look at that, just chip away at their health. They are the last team to rotate into the zone, but for good reason, and in this case, that might be to their advantage if these teams have already caught wind of one another. We got GUF, Games United Force, Bronx Flank. You know, such a powerhouse performance in the previous match that even though they didn't get the chicken dinner, they were by far the highest point gainer in round 3. But much different approach here for GUF. as they work their way into round 4 with only one elim as we are approaching 1 minute left in stage 5. So I do want to take note of this and bring attention to it so we can just check their kill count at the end of the match. You know, perhaps the strategy for them is a all-out Zone 6, Zone 7 full aggression. Get your elims, get your kill steals where you can without risking yourself. Maximize the reward for the risk. And if that is the case, then GUF is playing it perfectly. Otherwise, I will say that Miramar is Sanhok is just their specialty map. Well, Rafi getting eyes on Asteria, and it's a quick knock. Not like to be an immediate push here, just given the vulnerability it would leave from the likes of, I'm guessing that is Games United Force and Shockwave. Yeah. And beautifully shot from Kenny there, getting the takedown on Goat. Now, a double knock may have been a cause for push, but with such vulnerable open space, it would be a very risky decision to make for 2 extra elim points, especially considering just surviving a few seconds longer could bring those placement points, the equivalent of those emplacement points, on its own. So, a little bit of a standstill here as this Zone 6 comes down to its final 20 seconds here. Less and less real estate to choose from. Kemi, with a little bit of zone grace here, finding him or herself just on the outskirts of this new zone with a ability to keep a gatekeep pressure factor on GUF. GUF with not a lot of options but a vehicle rotation. And look at this! Did Ritzy just... Okay, I definitely misread that. It almost looked like a... Did Rehan actually knock his teammate with the buggy? I didn't think that would be altogether possible, but it may have. Midoma of Ritzy Esports finding himself at a low ground disadvantage to Rafi, and Rafi Kemi using that boulder positioning beautifully. All the while, OG Esports with a nice finish on the final hope for Nameless. And just like that, we're down to our final 5 teams. Look at this. OG Esports setting the tone here. 7 elims with 3 members still up. Very much in the equation still. And a spread here, which could be a coin toss in terms of if that's the right call. Because, yeah, it's got advantages. You got multiple lines of sight on your opponent, and you're not able to be taken out in one spray from the opposition. But if your teammate's knocked, your ability to get a revive is slim to none. So it's gonna be a tough call here. But look at the lay of the land. 15 players remain across this small stage 6 zone as Rafi keeping the pressure onto Ritzy Esports. Wipe just making these frags rain down, and it doesn't seem like he's got any shortage of utility here. Kenny with a takedown on Betho of Asteria. And look at this. Wipe does get the takedown on Rehan. And this is almost certainly a Rafa push. But again, remember what we were saying. It's so vulnerable. I still think that there's a way for him to get that thirst before OG steals. But unfortunately, the OG line of sight was acquired. And Wipe gets wiped a little bit. Will the revive come in from Kimmy with that geographical crest? It all is going to boil down to if Rafi weighs the options and decides to push instead of revive. And it looks like it's going to be a revive instead. Gentleman weighing his time. And we've seen Gentleman in round 2 with those frag grenades really making magic happen there. So I don't want to rule anything out, especially with that high ground and especially with the numbers in their favor. A full 4-piece. Rafa 10 kills to their name, really in full swing, and Gentleman responsible for half of those team's kills. OG keeping the pressure on Ritzy, all the while Asteria creeping in ever so carefully towards the likes of Shockwave. Shockwave does have a little cushion factor in their favor, and that's that they have a little bit of compound cover. Dorado going to utilize this opportunity to get some armor upgrades, upgrade to a Groza, and here we have it. Rafa keeping the pressure on Asteria. Asteria brought down to a 3-piece. Betho, who was just knocked, able to get brought back, and now trying to retaliate on Kenny with a frag of his own, does not find itself anywhere near that mark. And, yep, it's going to be an OG potential push onto Shockwave. All the while, Quaco with just these 4 shack walls for cover. And yep, the OG rotation is inbound, and it's going to be on none other than Rafa Esports. And here we have it. A little bit of a nade exchange here between a spread 4-piece of Rafa and 3 fish in a barrel. OG Esports, low ground and in a crater. I do see this probably being a strong disadvantage for OG if they're not able to sort of even these odds before taking it on to a CQC close quarter combat. All right, well, Dakimi of Shockwave still not needing to compromise their compound cover, able to hold position. They've got those 4 walls of cover, and really all they need to do is lay low and let these numbers dwindle, because as you can see, 0 elims on the board for Shockwave already. So it seems like their main plan here for round 4 is to get the bulk of their point gain from placement points and maybe some very, very final in-game eliminations or third-party kill steals. But regardless, I think it's safe to say, especially after some of the performances we've seen in round 3 and round 2, that placement is probably not going to be enough on its own to really even keep yourself in the top 5 bracket running. Well, there it is. Dorado with a takedown on Shockwave. This could potentially be a very ideal push for OG Esports, who find themselves outside of zone with only 1 member of Shockwave remaining. That compound cover could be theirs for the taking, and that could be pinnacle in that next zone shift. So I think it would be a good push, but unfortunately, Dorado pushing a little bit early and away from his teammates. I think if you are going to do that push, it needs to be all at the same time, probably separate vehicles, but all pushing together regardless. So it's not just giving Dakimi the opportunity to pick you off one at a time. If you got the numbers in your favor, it's time to bully. And Rafa is the only full 4-person team remaining. And look at them bullying in full effect with 12 elims on the board. Regardless of anything else that happens this match, Rafa is very likely to be the highest point gainer regardless, even if they don't acquire a chicken dinner. Oh, they're guaranteed now to be the max point gainer regardless of a chicken dinner. And that would be in the possibility of Quaco pulling a 1v4 off. But hey, crazier things have happened in PUBG Mobile Esports, but crazier things are not going to be happening today, as Rafa just laying down an absolute onslaught. 13 or 14 elims in round 4 alone. All right, I'm not sure where. Oh, there we go. I was like, where is my camera? Looks like we lost it. No biggie. Gonna just come back in. Regardless, Rafa Esports, one of the powerhouse Erangel performances of the night, no question. Let's not take credit from Asteria. Another high-ending performance, but a 26-point gain for Rafa in round 4 alone. Gonna push them to the chicken dinner king of the hill position. 16 elims on the board. This is a aggressive Rafa Esports, to say the least. I'm curious to see about the most... All right, the overall rankings for match 4. There you see it. We got the total Rafa, 26 points over Asteria's silver medal 10-point gain. That means that Rafa, the first place holder in round 4, more than 2.5 times second place's point gain. This is an absolute slaughterhouse for a round 4 performance. Well done by Rafa Gaming. And look at these elims. Rafa Keme with 5 elims to his name and extra damage to spare. His teammate Gentleman, another 5 to add with an extra 245 damage on the board. Crispy of Ritzy with 5 as well. Vexy with 4, and you guessed it, another Rafa. 3 out of the 5 top elims were Rafa Esports in round 4. Talk about a team that knows Erangel like the back of their hand. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's 4 matches down, done, and dusted. But we still got just a little bit of PUBG Mobile action ahead of us. So stick around. We're going to be back at you in just a few short moments with round 5 of the PMES Community Finals Day 1. Be back soon. guessed it, another Rafa. 3 out of the 5 top elims were Rafa Esports in round 4. Talk about a team that knows Erangel like the back of their hand. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's 4 matches down, done, and dusted. But we still got just a little bit of PUBG Mobile action ahead of us. So stick around. We're going to be back at you in just a few short moments with round 5 of the PMES Community Final. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with our 5th and our final round of the PMES Community Series Finals Day 1, and we are ending the night with a little destruction in the desert. Now, our participants have already had one go-around on the arid region of Miramar, but this is their opportunity to circle back and correct the errors that they may have made their previous time around. You get to go visit the desert twice today. Time to correct all the mistakes from your previous go-around. Sorry about that, y'all. Anyways, we got Far Voice fairly, well, not even fairly, just flat out close by the likes of Afterlife. We see Minus just right here, close enough to proximity chat trash talk the likes of Afterlife. And I think that this is potentially an opportunity to do so. As you can see, it's 4 members of Far Voice just swarming in here, and it looks like they might even beat Afterlife to the ground. This is not ideal for Afterlife. Mine is landing on an M249, a 5.56 LMG, the most forgiving magazine in the game. 75 round clip before an extended mag. Mine is able to put in some serious work before getting knocked himself, and Far Voice immediately acquiring all 4 elims on the board without losing a single member in the process. All right. Apologies. There we go. Okay. Never mind on that. We are going to change our mind for that for sure immediately. The camera is out of the equation today. All well. Catching eyes on GRX, they are off to yet again another rough go of it here. This time up against the likes of OG Esports. And with a knock on one of their teammates, he is able to be brought back up. And look at this. Just at the time Clutch comes in to try to provide some assistance to his teammates, they say, no, not needed. We'll be taking these OGs out of the equation right here and now. All the while, the tribe is about to fall at the hands of FNC. That is a tough one to swallow. And catching eyes, Celestial a bit of a slower start for them, and understandably so. They haven't really uh, showed much need to go out on the all-out aggressive or even much comfort as solos in their 1v2s and 1v3s. So I'm not really bothered by seeing a more reserved approach as they move in to Miramar. If there was ever a map to have a bit more of a cautious start on, I would say it would be the dry, open, arid region of Miramar, where there's just so much difference in geography and high ground with so much open space. You're vulnerable from not just your immediate surroundings, but from 300 meters away even. So the risk of a sniper shot is much, much, much higher than it is on, let's say, a map like Sanhok. So I am 100% in favor if Celestial is not comfortable in their CQCs for that little bit of a reserved approach. Now, as you can see, Juicy and Galley here in probably the least ideal vehicle for this map. The hippie bus is what I call it, or the Dumb and Dumber bus, if you will. And that is not going to be a fast way to navigate around the dunes and divots of this desert. Then again, neither is a luxury sports car. But, hey, if you got it like that, do it. And left with a little bit of downtime here, we see Clutch a decent ways away from his teammates here for whatever reason. It's not even a 2-2 split. At best, it's a 3-1. Could be even worse. But Clutch finding himself very vulnerable here. And just to put it out there, GRX Esports entering this match at the bottom of the bracket, literally 19th place overall, with only a couple points total on the board. I believe it was, 6 points or so. That's either at the start of this match or currently as it is. So GRX, it's a very bold strategy to take from such a low position on the placement board. It could be their undoing, but we'll have to wait and see. As you can notice, they got the likes of Kukuri Esports just behind them, and they've got to work their way into zone. And just behind them, they've got members of MS Mindset to worry about as well. So this could be a real issue. Now, I know GRX might look like they're all together as a singular unit from this map, but the way I describe it, when you assess Miramar from the full map view, you look at it like when you're driving on the interstate, and you look into your rear view mirror and it says objects may be closer or further away than they actually appear. This is one where they are further away from each other than it actually appears. Now you can see this contestation for center real estate of this new zone is already underway. We've got members, we got members of Team TBSS contesting it out, all the while Shockwave going at it with Celestials. Shum downed like a bad habit, leaving Matana here with a UMP 45 Scar L. It looks like they were able to trade knocks. Matana dealing out a decent lick of damage there, but not enough to seal the deal. However, Matana taking 0 damage in retaliation. Not really distracted by Goo's rotation, but unfortunately not able to secure the thirst on Juicy before Vexy revives as well. This is an interesting altercation where I'd say both teams kind of making a little bit of split-second calls here. Calls that they may or may not stand behind at, when they talk about it in hindsight. But for now, Vexy, basically any way you put it, low ground, no health to speak of, outnumbered, outmanned, outgunned. That's a Shockwave dub right there and then. 4 elims on the board, 3 of which go to Matana alone. And they are going to carry on as a full 4-person team. Okay. Well, we are left here 16 teams remaining, spread across 64 players. And we are just about 1 minute left for stage 2. And this zone is about to shift. And with the geography being that open Miramar geography, the open landscape where you can find yourself vulnerable potentially from 360 degrees. Every angle could be a potential point of vulnerability if you don't have some geographical or compound cover. So I would imagine that the moment this next zone becomes apparent, that it is going to be a race to the new ideal real estate, a race to prime positioning, if you will. And yeah, Shockwave just playing it the waiting game as for now. And you can already see the approach that they're going to take, and every man for himself vehicle approach, or at potentially a 3-vehicle approach. But either way, they are spreading their assets out, kind of not putting all their eggs in one basket, meaning that if they are going to make a vehicle rotation in through dangerous territory, they're not going to be all in one vehicle. It's not going to be one guy who gets 4 members eliminated with 1 vehicle explosion. But as we said in the previous round, that does come with some risk, meaning that if your teammates are knocked and you're each in your own vehicle, well, the ability to provide any assistance or revives becomes a lot more difficult. So they are going to have to, weigh the options here. And if they feel like they can do it, maybe it's their best option. But here and now in front of us, we got Oceans versus Fnatic. And boy, Dennis, who has previously today been their highest hitter, their most elims player, already downed. And that could be really problematic for Fnatic if they're pushed upon by the likes of Oceans. Now, we saw Oceans, come back from what ultimately looked like it was going to be an undoing. They had a phenomenal performance, and then immediately after, a horrible one with no point gain, and yet still maintained high positioning. So here we see it. Bat Squad up against, 2 fights happening at once. We got Xenocide squaring off against Ritzy with Sesk with the S12, trying to make the most of that stairway and high ground, but just ultimately taken down. Sesk is useless now, and now it's down to Mahi OP, now leaving everything in the hands of the Nade Master, Motro, and Mikey, his teammate, as they come in. S12, guns ablazing. It is a battle of shotguns. Motro downed. Sesk brought back up via revive. Mikey, with very little health to speak of, but does secure the clutch and gets the remaining 3 elims. Xenocide laying out a genocide, and just like that, 4 elims to their name, and they are coming out victorious. All the while, GRX throat and throat with Rafa Esports. Apologies for the team name misinterpretation previously. This is Rafa. There is no Rafi competing today. It's Rafa. And Kime, I do apologize for it. But look at the spread on Rafa Esports. This tells me that these guys and girls are confident. They are comfortable in their 1v2s, their 1v3s, and they're comfortable as a team unit as well. They spread out confidently, and this, we're a lesser performing team. I feel like I would probably criticize it, but these multiple angles and lines of sight for a team that is so hyper aggressive and frankly just skilled in their aggressive combat, I think it is an opportunity for Rafa to spread their wings and bully the playing field. If I called him Rafi again, oops. Rafa! What if Rafi is like a cute name for Rafa? I don't know. Well, either way, a battle of patience between these two teams. All the while, Fnatic Esports eliminated off in the distance, able to acquire 6 elims before being taken out, but light years away from that placement point gain bubble, I will say. So remember that getting into that top 8 positioning is where you really start to get the bulk of those placement points, and anything before that is kind of just elims alone. So unfortunately, those six elims, which could have probably, if they were able to make it to placement, probably been a pretty hefty point gain, unfortunately for Fnatic, cut short. If anything can be said about Miramar, it is that you definitely need to know when to exercise patience. And speaking of patient, TBSS, very, very patient here. So patient that they haven't even pushed themselves out of their comfort zone for one single elim yet. But with the full team, you know, everything going in their favor, you can tell they have their eyes on at least acquiring those placement points before risking their necks in any open territory. Before trying to go out and risk those elim points, they're going to at least try to acquire some placement first. Well, Shockwave getting a little bit shocked themselves as Shum is downed, and it looks like Kukuri here down to a two-piece of Oman and Oman and Taz, and being swarmed on by none other than CKRS. We got Taz here at the forefront. But look, remember we say it time and time again, you know, there's just so many points of vulnerability on a map as open as this desert landscape of Miramar. It is one where you just cannot get that tunnel vision. You can't forget about your peripherals, and case in point, CKRS making the most of that and took advantage of it on Kukuri. But now, Mindset swarming in with a third-party push on the Mind, but CKRS trying to hold them off at bay with some utilities, making those nades rain a little bit of hellfire, keeping Mindset immobilized. All the while, Kukuri eliminated then and there. And you can kind of see how. Kukuri just stuck in between a rock and a hard place with CKRS and Mindset. It was only a matter of time. But here's the altercation on our hands, a 3v4 between these two teams. And neither team really ready to go risk too much vulnerability in favor of a line of sight on their enemy. They're going to make this a battle of spatial audio cues and nade throws, it seems. But Kite using the geography to his favor to try to implement a flank rotation and catch CKRS from behind. Will it be successful is the question, especially with him doing this in a vehicle. Yeah, I think the spatial audio is by far giving that cue away to Mindset. So Kite kind of bailing on it for the right reasons and parking the vehicle back in a position of safety so they have their escape route. Fire Voice up against the likes of Nameless, but look at this high ground. You know, it might not have the numbers in his favor, but with that kind of high ground, getting those two elims could be as simple as one lucky nade throw for Fire Voice. Well, that's a caster curse, as I completely ruined the odds of that two birds, one stone nade throw for Minus. But getting great damage on Lair before the inevitable knock with that Abacan, the brand new 5.56 AR. But there is still a nameless threat beneath him, several nameless threats even. But what they don't expect is the Far Voice split. Meaning that Far Voice has some low ground holders who are potentially planning to creep up on the likes of Ketu and King. However, Nameless is ready to reposition themselves, and given the performance from them today, I think it's the right move. And honestly, King kind of thanking his lucky stars. I might have spoken too soon. King not out of the line of fire just yet. Getting a little bit of geographical crest cover there behind the hill, but his vehicle is out of the equation. And King just barely surviving the shots from Minus, so Seiko comes in and has to put one bullet total down to seal the deal. And that is it. Nameless, well, their name is not going to be remembered from match 5, that's for sure. All right, well, GRX Mafia putting outward some warning distance shots towards Far Voice Gaming. No connecting damage there, but really just keep the pressure factor on. TBSS firing at the rotation from Asteria. Asteria able to grab position with some high ground here, and this could be huge in terms of scouting and relaying information. That information could be critical if they operate a 2-2 split or even a 3-1 split. Well, I apologize. Asteria is a 3-person team, so a 2-1 split or a 1-1-1 split. But regardless, we got GRX and Xenocide here at each other's throats in the congested city of Picado, where battle ensues, and a looming third-party threat potential from Rafa. Clutch. A interesting choice of scope. 4X M249. You don't often see LMGs with big scopes on, but boy, to say it didn't work out all right for them then would be a lie. Xenocide, what was a close quarter altercation with GRX, now becomes a position where they're stuck in between a rock and a hard place in Picado here, with just sandwiched in, kind of pinched in, and not a lot of ability to move around outside of that building without taking a fight with at least one of those teams. Mindset and CKRS continuing this long-standing feud. I mean, Mindset's still a full 4-piece, but boy, to say that battle has been looming between those two teams for at least 5 minutes. TBSS, Aracon barely getting to the building, and I don't even want to call it a position of safety. If this nade comes in through the window and bounces off the frame, it could be his undoing. He's able to heal up. All right, TBSS, you gotta ask, if your tryout and the rest of your team is already in zone and you're the only one outside, is it a good idea to engage in this fight from the blue zone? Probably not, unless you're prepared to sacrifice yourself. Meaning, I think he has every intention of maybe being a distraction, or maybe just not making it into that new zone safely, and he's trying to make the most of what time he can. Mindset. Getting a line of sight on members of Asteria with a little bit of high ground. But you can see Picado is where the bulk of these teams have chosen to build their nest here, with GRX sandwiched in between Rafa and Xenocide, with members of Shockwave to their north and Rafa to their south. I mean, it is danger on 4 sides if you're GRX. Luckily for GRX, they might have a little bit of a saving grace distraction in that Games United here kind of thrown into the thick of it with Xenocide, granting GRX not just a potential to third-party push, but maybe even third-party elim steal, and at the very least, just lay low and get one more rank up in the placement. Now, there are 10 teams spread out across these 30 players, but once we get to that 8th place, that's when the placement points start really building up here. So every moment that you can stay alive now matters. Much more critically than, let's say, the beginning of the match. And honestly, if you're, a team like GRX who maybe hasn't had a huge elim day, I mean, yeah, I would say maximize the point gain that you can get. And for them, that would probably mean placement bulk points and maybe a elim steal here and there, and maybe making it to the top 3 and taking that fight on then. But here we have it. GRX finding a line of sight on a member of Xenocide. And there it is. Xenocide now reduced down to, I believe, a 2-piece. And on top of that, a spread out 2-piece, a vulnerable 2-piece. Far Voice and Mindset in the ever looming altercation. Here it is. Far Voice shot there. Can't forget about Asteria. All right, Alex.
making sure the vehicle is at a position of safety just in case they need that abrupt rotation in, or maybe even need some last minute ditch vehicle cover fire, I would say. Especially on a map like Miramar, those vehicles could be the only thing giving you cover against a hailstorm of bullets. But Far Voice doing what they have done beautifully for the majority of the day, keeping the numbers in their favor in all the way up until the end game. And this is no exception. Coming in with a full fourth piece and getting caster cursed by me as two of their members get knocked. Minus getting thirsted. Sup down. Seiko is the final hope. Every time I say full four piece, it's almost like I just curse. And there it is. Seiko, now the final hope for Far Voice. And with multiple enemies of Asteria looming in front of them, if I was Seiko already inside this new zone, no real need to push out into what would be a certain handicap altercation. I bet you Seiko's going to just hold position and let these numbers dwindle, because now we are at that placement point bracket. Every team he survives longer than is extra points for the team. And as y'all saw, they already have the elim points in their favor. If he can just lay low and play that waiting game, Far Voice could still come out with a pretty healthy point game. Okay, well, Shockwave in the distance, putting a little bit of pressure onto Games United Force here, and it looks like it hasn't resulted in a thirst just yet. Will it amount to a push? It would be a very vulnerable push, but I could see Shockwave doing it. Shockwave kind of riding that cusp here in terms of elimination performances here. All the while, Mindset and Hysteria at each other's throats, and whoo, did Mindset come out victoriously? No, Mindset is eliminated out of the equation. Hysteria coming out victorious, but it looks like it came at an extremely high price, bringing Hysteria down to their final remaining member. And granted, with 6 teams left, yeah, they gained a little bit of placement points and they gained that extra elim point. But at this point, as a solo, if you're Hysteria, every team you survive longer than is just extra points versus the odds of taking on these handicap fights, these 1v4s, 1v3s, where it's just low odds of coming out victorious. Weighing the risk v reward if you're Hysteria and having the discipline to hold position, even when you might have that line of sight to get that third-party steal, it could be all that separates you from life and death is just the element of surprise. The fact that Far Voice may not know exactly where you are. And same can be said for Far Voice. Seiko is the last hope for his team, and in the same predicament as Hysteria Esports, his final member, where it's just, hey, why would we take these fights on as a one person when if we just lay low and let you guys fight it out, it's more point gain than getting this elim on the other solo member. And yes, indeed, the zone shift has happened. It's going to be a Picado in-game, but the outskirts of Picado. And as you can see, Rafa a little bit spread here, and Shockwave approaching the auditorium here, the stadium here, for their final showdown in a Stage 8 in-game. Games United Force getting the prime real estate, though. The only compound cover afforded to this new zone, and it goes to one of the highest eliminating teams of the day, and that's including their underperforming matches. Well, unfortunately for Hysteria and Far Voice, what could have ultimately been a win-win for both of them if they would just let these teams, GRX, Rafa, and GUF, fight it out. Well, unfortunately, Hysteria and Far Voice have taken notice of each other, and they're creeping closer. So it's all about who eliminates who first. If GRX takes on Rafa first, or Shockwave takes on GRX first, it might just pan out, well, never mind. Far Voice finishing off Asteria. Asteria eliminated when it could have been a lay low and get those easy points situation. That's only with Observer 2020 hindsight. Shockwave creeping in on Rafa Esports without a fear in their head. Dakimi cooking up a frag grenade. All the while, Shum doing a little bit of the same and keeping the pressure on. Hellfire raining down. As you can see, not enough to get Wipe out of the equation, but enough to get him low on health. Dakimi with that P90, and look at how much ammo up against an S12. It's a close fight, and look, Dakimi barely surviving just by a thread. 1% health, but alive is alive, and able to heal up, bring himself back up, but can he get the finish on Rafa, who also only has 1% health? Oh my goodness, how did that knock on Shum even happen? It almost looked like he took fall damage or something there, but I'm guessing Heaven or Bronx must have... I don't even know how that happened unless it was fall damage, but whatever. Dakim able to get the revive up nonetheless, and evening the odds... well, I guess handicapping the odds once again to a 3v2 up against GUF. Dakimi keeping the pressure on with the utilities, making the Hellfire burn, baby, burn, and keeping GUF in a bit of a hot position here. Dakimi doing what the P90 does and getting those easy elims here, but now Seiko, the final hope, getting the takedown on Dakimi. It's a 1v2. Can Seiko do it from half health? Luxus and Metana pushing forward. Luxus, S12 in hand. Metana, DBS. Shockwave stealing the show with a round 5 chicken dinner. Look at it. The spread as we see it. No team wins twice on day 1 of the PMES Community Finals. This was an absolute onslaught of PUBG Mobile esports action, just to set the tone, just to give you a taste of what's to come on day 2 and 3 of the PMES Community Finals. Look at this. Shockwave just put into the frying pan. Pressure factor has been building with that blue zone behind them, but the numbers in their favor as they work on a weakened Seiko. Seiko, who is such a powerhouse performer, especially in round 1 and 2 for Far Voice, you know, putting up his best fight, but ultimately outnumbered, outmanned, and outgunned. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the results that speak for themselves. Shockwave, 17 eliminations and an overall ranking of 2nd place. A very, very nice little in the match tone, in the day tone. Ain't nothing wrong with silver when you got those kind of numbers to add to it. And let's have a look at them. The breakdown of damage. Shum with over 2,000, and same for Dakimi. Every member of this team just really laying out high damage numbers. And granted, you know, if this is the overall day elims, tough. But 17 elims, 10 rank points, 27 point total. Here we have it. The overall standings for match 5, that's a 12-point lead over the 2nd place holder of Far Voice. And another tough ending for the likes of Ritzy, another tough ending for Bat and Celestial and Tribe. There's going to be so much slack in the rope to make up for, so much ground to cover moving into day 2 and 3 of the PMES Community Finals. So if your teams like Tribe, it's not a time to rest just because the matches are over for the day. It's time to hit the books, time to get to studying and just sifting through footage, studying your enemy plays and studying what went wrong today, what can be improved in time for tomorrow. But look at that. Top 5 elims for match 5. Dakimi just holding the King of the Hill position with 8 elims and 353 extra damage to spare for a total of almost 1,200 damage. GRX, a great performance by Zebi, 6 elims and 700 damage to boot there. Rafa doing well as well. But here it is, the overall standings, day 1 after match 5, Rafa holding a humongous lead, a 21-point gain over Shockwave. Yes, we were talking about ain't nothing wrong with silver for Shockwave, but a lot of that point gain for Shockwave was in round 5 alone. There is still a huge gap. Over half of the points that Shockwave has accumulated today, or I guess not quite, almost half of the points that Shockwave has accumulated today is still remaining between themselves and first place. And look at this spread, ladies and gentlemen. Not a single team pulling a double chicken dinner tonight. Now that can be a rare occasion, but to me, that is a good sign that we are due for some amazing PUBG Mobile esports action moving into days 2 and 3. Top 5 elims overall. Conte of Oceans, just a start to finish berserker warpath from Game 1 all the way to Game 5, and look at it, 15 elims with 592 extra damage to spare. Crispy with 12 for Ritzy. Rafa's wipe with 11 elims, but look at the insane damage from Rafa's wipe. Yeah, this tells me, he's a slaughterhouse, berserker, all-out aggressive performer, but there's room for improvement in terms of securing those thirsts. He's able to get those knocks, though. 3,000 damage is insane. Get it? Catching eyes here. These are just some of the replays of the night. Xeno side up against the likes of Ritzy. But, ladies and gentlemen, day 1 down, done, and dusted. That's a wrap. But we're coming at you same time tomorrow for the PMES Community Finals Day 2, where we get into 5 more intense matches of PUBG Mobile mayhem. And will these teams be able to maintain this momentum? Will Far Voice be able to widen their gap? Will we see a outlier winning team's performance where it's a battle for second? Only time will tell. But ladies and gentlemen, I've been Red Eyes Casting. It's been an honor and a pleasure to cast day 1 for you, and I cannot wait to see you again, same time, same place tomorrow for day 2 of the PMES Community Finals. See you then.